In three, two, one. My name is Danny Sneed, the Encourager. And on a lot of my social media platforms, I use the moniker Mr. Go Live as a content creator. I want you guys to sit back and take a ride on a journey with me and my guest today as we take a rearview look back into what happened in our lives and how what happened got better. So first, I'm going to talk about who I'm here with and who's here supporting me on this journey of self-discovery and looking back on some of the things that happened in my life. Today I have with me Robert Mitchell, and I'm gonna read a little bit about his background. Robert, in his early life, was born and raised in Beaumont, Texas. And while living in Beaumont, he said he was curious had a curiosity of love and learning. They moved to Los Angeles in the summer of 1972. The support of his family provided a strong foundation, instilling in him the importance of kindness and hard work. Looking back at his education background, he said his school was his first avenue of self-discovery.
Yeah.
He said he found a joy in reading, American history, and music. These formative years taught, in Robert's word, resilience, and helped him navigate both success and setbacks, and each one shaping his character. Some of his career expectations were, at an early age, he joined the United States Army at the age of 17.
1975.
Right, and I like to say that me and Robert are trauma bonded, and we have to look back and see just what that means. And because I also served in the military.
Okay.
And not to say it was a traumatic experience, but that's another conversation. Robert said his military experience brought its own sets of challenges and rewards, but he did learn the importance of teamwork, leadership, and discipline. He also mentioned that his ambition has always been to make a meaningful difference both in his life and the lives of others.
Yep.
That's why I am glad to have you here today as a guest. Some of his personal reflections, he said, looking back, Robert said, I realized that every chapter in my life, both joyful and difficult, contribute to who I am today. My journey has been shaped by relationships, choices, and the pursuit of purpose. I value integrity, compassion, and the drive to keep going. So as I mentioned earlier, I asked you guys to sit back and take a ride with me. And Robert, in his bio, talks about the journey. And so today on this journey, those who ride with us, I want to be full disclaimer that on this ride, there's no driver. It's just passengers.
Okay.
I'm gonna let the audience determine who was at the wheel the whole time we were on this journey. I believe without asking, if I ask you who you think is driving, I already know, Robert, probably who you would say who's driving.
Well, I don't know who's driving, but I know who's not driving, and I'm not driving.
See,
so I'm good with that.
That's where you get it. See, that's what I'm saying. You already get it. I've lived long enough to realize that, and I got this from Rick Warren's book, The Purpose-Driven Life.
Okay.
Didn't read the whole book because I couldn't get past the first sentence in the book. And if anybody's read Rick Warren's powerful book, The Purpose-Driven Life, that probably has 1 trillion copies out there and is read over and over again. The first sentence in that book says, it's not about me. Wow. It's not about me. And so what it did is set up for me in my life when I got that book, I was looking for answers. So it meant something to me only because where I was in my life.
Danny, some people live their lives, their entire life without having a purpose. Some people just, I mean, they get up, they go to work, they do regular stuff, they provide for their family. But when you really, if you would to really ask them what's their purpose, they don't know. You know, I mean, to be Johnny's dad. You know, what happens when Johnny becomes an adult? What happens to Johnny's dad, you know? So that's just my take on a purpose-driven life. You know, life should be purposeful and meaningful. That's just my take on it.
And so my desire in this conversation, because all we're having today is just a conversation, what I've learned in my life when I've been questioned in this journey of Danny, you talk about what happened, and I see how what happened got better evident in your life. And it's hard to juxtapose where people see where I am now to when I tell the story of what happened.
Okay.
But what I do add to the conversation when they ask, what changed? And this is always the biggest question. And they want it in one sentence. They want it compartmentalized. They don't want an hour podcast of me explaining what was the most significant change in my life. So I narrowed it down to just a small take.
Okay.
What changed in my life, what produced change in my life was the conversation about change and why change was important. So being in a group or in an area or around people that were willing to have a conversation about change. And I'm going to hint to some of these areas where I found these conversations going on. They were in self-help groups.
You know, change is the only constant there is. Everything changes, you know, and you know, I've heard a friend of mine say it one time, it's not change that causes the pain, it's the resistance to change that causes the pain.
You know, someone told me the only person that likes change is a baby.
Especially if they're wet and poopy.
You know what I'm saying? They said nobody else wants change, but a baby. But let me go back, and because what happened was I was born in 1964, and I want to look and see, since we're doing this, take on this journey of what happened. Well, Danny, what happened in 1964? Well, in 1964, the Civil Rights Act ends legal segregation in the United States.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware because I was just born. But again, to contextualize it, I was there, but I wasn't aware.
I was 6.
And so, not only that, China tested their first atomic bomb.
Okay.
I didn't hear it. I still was a baby. I wasn't aware that was going on. But I'm here.
Right.
I'm here. Also, the top song on the Billboard was "I Wanna Hold Your Hand" by the Beatles. See, you were 6.
Yeah.
You probably heard that song.
Yeah. But I didn't know what I was listening to.
And me the same.
Actually, in Beaumont, I probably didn't hear that song.
It probably wasn't played.
It wasn't playing on the radio stations that we listened to.
The #1 movie in 1964 was Mary Poppins.
Still haven't seen Mary Poppins.
Oh my God.
Still haven't seen the movie.
You got to watch Mary Poppins.
Okay.
So, the #1 toy in 1964 was G.I. Joe doll.
I had a G.I. Joe.
Okay, all right. One of the first introduced popular snacks that we like and some don't was Pop-Tarts, 1964.
Ooh.
The Ford Mustang came out in 1964. And did you know in 1964 in recorded history, it was the first time that we didn't have a vice president?
What happened? Why not?
Think about it. What happened in 1963?
Okay, well, Kennedy was assassinated.
And that left,
LBJ.
and so we didn't have a vice president.
Okay, got it.
So remember, we're talking about what happened. But I'm going back to the year I was born. Why? Because I'm going to tie it in. But I had to do that on this journey of self-discovery. And because I've had such a long history of dealing with mental health, therapy, psychiatrists. One of the things the journeys they took me on when I sat on that couch and I sat in that office and talked, not all the time, but oftentimes, they would always start from when my early childhood. I'm gonna let you add context to that.
you know, when what happened? When you go back to, I've done some journaling, and in my journaling, I had to go back to when I was 7 years old.
Come on now.
I mean, that's as far as I remember. At 5, you know, there was this man that was teaching me how to play the piano. And I'll never forget that. And him and his buddy, they would drink, and I'd just be this 5-year-old kid. He'd say, come on over here, and they'd sit me up. And he taught me how to play Mary Had a Little Lamb on 3 keys. And I actually played Mary Had a Little Lamb on those 3 keys yesterday at work.
So your muscle memory still can remember that.
I still remember those, how to play Mary Had a Little Lamb, but on just 3 keys. And I always wanted to know how to play the piano. Actually, through what happened, I actually did some journaling, and I held a resentment for this man for dying when I was 5 years old.
So let me add some context to the word resentment, because another thing that has happened to me not most, but part of my life is I was given information without the context of the information.
Okay.
Point and say, people say, Dan, you need to change your attitude, but they never gave me the context of what attitude was. So when you said resentment, I had heard that word a long time before I didn't even know what that meant. I heard it. Now, I could almost guess what it meant. I know it wasn't something positive toward or event or a person. But in my self-discovery journey, and I really wanted to reshape my character and my values, I would dig deeper into what these things meant.
Well, at the time, I didn't know it was a resentment. All I knew is I was angry.
To my point.
I was angry at this man for dying because my thought process was selfish. I was thinking about me. I dare him die before he could teach me how to play the piano. And I held on to that anger for a long time.
So resentment can be defined as unresolved anger.
One form of it.
One form of it.
Yes.
And so it was one of the things that I had a long time relationship with my mother was built on that alone.
Okay. You know, it goes back to, what was the first word that we learned that we didn't like? The word no.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. So let me add context to that. He said the first word we learn is no. I'm here to make the case that a baby cries for attention.
Yeah.
A baby. That's why they crying. They want attention.
They want something.
When we move to a toddler, we yearn for love and attention as a toddler. Now, the baby is not looking for love. He's looking for attention. He's not
Okay.
old enough to understand the love concept. He's just crying. He wants to be picked up.
Something.
Right. He wants something. He wants the attention. But a toddler has learned what affection means. Remember when you 3, 4, you come hug me, we've been told I love. So we already know and start to learn what love is, and we start yearning it. Now this is not science. Let me go through all of them. A young male, just like the baby wants attention, but instead of crying for it, he acts out.
So can that be a form of crying?
So remember, I'm just supposing, and this is not like, this is just my kind of like my thinking towards this. This could probably be challenged and said in a lot of different ways, but it's how I describe, like, the babies want attention, the toddler wants love. Now the young male, he still wants that same attention, but he can't cry anymore. So instead of crying, he uses other things to get attention. Oftentimes, not all the time, he acts out. And he also, when he comes to situations that are emotional or challenging, oftentimes, remember, I'm not painting a wide picture, he reacts and doesn't respond to situations. 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds. We act out for attention, and we react instead of respond to situations. Let me get to the last one, because I'm gonna let you give your story back to you. Now here comes the grown man, steps in the room. He ain't a baby no more. He ain't a toddler. He ain't a young man. A grown man works conditionally, meaning that oftentimes he will give attention and love only in the hopes of getting something in return.
Okay.
So we done switched from yearning for it and wanting it. As a grown man, I figured out something else. I can give it and hope through some type of form of reciprocity. The more I give, that I'm gonna get a return on that. Instead of acting out as a grown man and saying I need somebody to pay attention and I need love, as a grown man, I learned how to go out and invest in what I want. When I meet a woman, can I take you out to dinner? Can I buy her flowers? So I'm really conditionally putting together something to get what I want in return.
Okay.
Now, what happened to me as being raised by a mother and not having a balance of a father and seeing how he operates, I end up not having the ability to deal with the emotional side of life when things didn't go how I expected them. I probably end up stuck in the male's role where I often acted out for attention, and I most times reacted and not respond to situations when I became an adult. I didn't move to the grown man type of approach to life where to go out and foster relationships.
Okay.
I had this young man's mentality that for attention, I need to do something. Hey, here I am over here.
Wave a flag.
Right, I gotta do something. And then if I get in a situation where there's a relationship on a job, any type of conflict that causes resolution, I didn't have the tools to deal with it. So oftentimes, instead of responding to situations, I reacted to them.
Okay.
Now I'm gonna toss it back to you.
You know, the way I see from the baby to the adult, those stages, they're all selfish, self-centered, and self-seeking. That baby learns early.
Crying.
It gets me attention. So when I want some attention, I don't care what mama doing, I don't care what daddy doing, I don't care what nobody doing. I want what I want. And so therefore, when that baby cries and we pick it up, okay, I got what I wanted. My youngest child, I raised my youngest children as a single parent. And with my youngest child, this little girl, she could have been maybe 2 months old. And I remember one night we were laying there in the bed and I'm watching television. She starts to cry. And and I pick her up and she stopped crying.
Okay.
I said, no, we're not doing this. and I laid her back down and she cried herself to sleep. But from that point on, we never did that one again. So with as we grow, we start learning how to control and manipulate people to get what we want. I mean, and it's all self-driven. It's about me, me, me. It's selfish, self-centered, self-seeking. So I'm just getting back to that word no. The first time I was told no, I didn't like it. I did not like being told no. Mama said, don't touch the stove, it's hot. And and I'll go towards the stove and she say no. But soon she turn her back and then I touch that stove and I get burned. Now I'm hollering. And so she says, well, what happened? And I say, nothing. Well, that's a whole lot of nothing. So as I grow up, as I progress, the word no becomes a way of me having a negative reaction being told no. Today, at 67 years old, in some instances, I still do not like being told no. I still have that resentment. I still have that anger of being told no. So again, back to that evolution and back to those people that are active in our lives. When we're told no, we don't like it, and therefore we change. Today, Danny, I like change. I've been told a blind person could not make it in my house because I move furniture all the time. I really do. I haven't moved, right before Christmas, I moved the furniture for the Christmas tree. And that furniture's still sitting there, and I may move that furniture again in the living room in March. I'm just gonna move it around. I like change, I embrace change. Again, it's not the change that causes the pain, it's the resistance to change that causes the pain. That's where the problem lies. Because I'm resisting something that's inevitable. That doesn't make sense. Why resist it? Because it's guaranteed to happen.
One of the most fascinating conversations I have with my peers, because I have grown adult children now, and I have adult grandchildren, 2 grandboys. One's 24 and one's 14, and I'm not the pawpaw that sits on the porch and tell kids to get out of my yard and don't stand on my grass. I hadn't made it to that point yet.
Okay.
But I have gotten older enough to where acceptance, attention, and validation no longer drives me. So let me contextualize that. And I need to go back into the framework of the show of what happened. And because someone in the listening audience may not have ever, in my mind, everybody knows me. In my granddad house, in my delusional thinking, I have probably 12 Facebook followers. And in my mind, that's 12 million people.
Okay, all right.
When I post something on Facebook, if 46 people like it, in my mind, 46 million people don't like what I've done.
Celebrity.
Well, not in a vanity way, but I feel like my voice is being heard.
Okay.
That And I used to tell my best friend, you know how many people I need to really support me, to feel good about what I'm doing? He said, what? I said, one.
Just one.
I said, I've had a lot of speaking opportunities. And each time I have a speaking opportunity, the best opportunity that I've had to speak has been to small groups. And say if I'm speaking to a group of 8 men, when I get up on, and I'm the facilitator, and I begin to speak, in my mind, I'm not speaking to 8 people, I'm speaking to 8,000 people in an arena. And I do this because I don't need the 8,000 people in front of me to give my best. And I followed this way of approach to living for a long time. And I believe that I can make the case that the road to me having 20 years of abstinence from drugs and alcohol was based on the premise that I no longer needed an audience. I no longer needed everybody saying, you're okay, you're well, you're great, you're awesome.
You know, with those 8 people, you may actually touch, 8 million is stretching it, but you may touch 8,000.
I'm manifesting the 8 million on the back end.
Because if those 8 people know 100 people, and something that you said to them may click while they're talking to those 800 people, or one of those people, and it's a trickle-down effect. It's that ripple effect. I believe in that.
And they have a series out now that a guy that knew I was going to do this podcast was very adamant that I watched the ripple effect. And because one of my next topics, and I'm setting this up for the next podcast for the Encourager, is going to be talking about the circle, the full circle, and how many people have stories about how life went full circle. I started here, and I went all the way around the earth. I went in life, it's just an analogy. I went all the way around, and I ended up back here. And when I came back, it was a complete trip around the world, almost, so to speak.
When on that analogy, when you come back, you'll be able to see the change. You'll be able to see what happens look like. Because from going around, when you're at that circle at 180, it's totally different from 1. And then when that thing come back 360, okay, you're back at 1 at 360. You're at 1 from the beginning. But look at the trail that at 180 or at 290 or at 260. Look at what that trail, and look at what that looks like, and you would be amazed. The circle. Okay, I was born in Beaumont. We moved to Los Angeles in '72. My mama moved to Los Angeles, and I was 13 years old. I went with my mama. And before I left California in 2023, I went to my mama's Inglewood Cemetery where she's buried, and I actually thanked her because it went, I'll say, full circle, because when I left Beaumont at 13, and when I came back to Texas in 2023, which was, 50-something years later, it was all different, but it was still very much the same, because I ended up right back where I started from. But the difference is everything that happened, what happened? All the stuff that happened in that circle.
And now you have a story of how what happened got better.
And see, that's because what happened, it has to get better because it's different, because it's a change.
What about perception? So it's some of the things that I use over and over again. Pretentiousness. What is my other favorite one? The one we just said. Let me read my bio because my thoughts.
Okay.
Danny Sneed, the encourager, aka Mr. Goal Line, was born and raised in Texarkana, Texas, by a single mother in a Christian home. And this mother that I had, this woman right here, everybody had a Miss Bobby Jean in their life. Man, Miss Bobby Jean. By the name alone, you can already play, oh, I know she didn't play.
No. In Texas, no.
No, she didn't play.
Not Miss Bobby Jean.
And Miss Bobby Jean had to raise 3 kids by herself. And the relationship I had with my mother, the most earliest memory I had relationship with my mother was, she was a Christian. I believe I can make the case because I had an epiphany last night. When I looked at the encourager and what does that mean, what does it embody, my life became that of the encourager when my mother was pregnant with me. My life became impactful before I was born into the earth, and let me make the case. My mother told me a story that when she got pregnant with me, she stopped smoking cigarettes, she stopped drinking, and she got saved. And she began to read the Bible to me while she was pregnant. This is the story my mother told me. She gave up that lifestyle because she got pregnant on her firstborn.
Okay.
But she didn't just change, she said she got saved. And for those of us, the listening audience, don't know what that term means, she got saved, that means she adopted the Christian values of living.
Okay.
That are followed through people through the Bible, through scripture, through rituals, going to church on Sundays, and taking your kids to church on Sundays, to Sunday school, church, and to Bible study, BTU, Baptist Training Union, at it was at 5 o'clock.
You might remember the penny basket.
When the Cowboys just the game, when it's time to go to BTU, it'll be in the fourth quarter of a Cowboy game. Oh man. But you know, my mama didn't even play nonverbals, meaning that in our household, not only were you very disciplined, you weren't allowed to use nonverbals, meaning that you couldn't display displeasure or discomfort or irritation and let it be seen.
Right.
So if you didn't like something, you had to do like this here. Yes, ma'am. Your attitude, you couldn't slump your shoulders because it would set her off. Then I need you to do something. Yes, ma'am. My tone had to be the right tone. Now, I know that the way I'm describing how I was raised, I wasn't uniquely raised. I met so many people that talk about being raised by a mother almost the same way. But the reason I talk and want to honor my mother is because one of the things about being raised like that, up until I was in my 30s, I resented everything about how I was raised. I resented every aspect, every minute, every hour of how I was raised because it was so disciplining.
Okay.
And it was so much built on Christian principles. And the discipline was discipline. It was not timeouts. It was not sit in the corner. It was not, I'm gonna take your games away from you. The discipline was discipline.
Okay.
I didn't know how to process it as a child, that this was a form of raising children under the generation she was born under. I don't know all that.
You know, with our parents, and I had to come to grips with this. My parents only taught me what they knew. That's it. And I had to, you know, I always thought that they were mean or they were this, and especially when I was told no, you know. But what I actually had to learn, you cannot transmit something that you don't have. You can only transmit what you got. And they transmitted to me what they knew. So that's what I hear you saying.
And you know what? It took going through therapy, sitting on someone's couch, them taking me back to that 5-6-year-old child that felt what he felt then. And they made me realize I didn't stop feeling like that. Ooh. As an adult male. But I sat back like that, I was shocked. And I was only there because I had lost my mother. And I had went back another relapse. And that's a whole nother story.
Okay.
But again, I had finally been convinced to go seek some help, right? To deal with whatever was going on with me, go get some professional help. And it's something I would tell anybody. Even today, I have friends that are struggling with raising their kids, and all that, but they are not open to mental health. Or the idea that there is a solution in mental health. Let me finish this, then I'll let you talk to you. Because the bias in our society is, along with me, is that it's not mental health. It sounds good, but it says that crazy goes along with mental health. That term alone, who wants that stigma attached to them when you say he need mental health? So in a lot of people, when they hear that, they don't hear that he needs mental health. They hear he or she or the child is what? Crazy.
Something's wrong with him.
And crazy is not a t-shirt.
No.
Crazy is not a hat that you wear. Crazy is something that doesn't get you the job when you apply for it. Even if you're trying to start a relationship, you can't begin a relationship saying, first I need to let you know a little something about me. Well, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm saying, you know, I deal with some mental health issues, you know what I'm saying? And so as soon as I say that, what is she thinking? What is she thinking?
Wait a minute, what's really going on here?
I can't give her the full context of mental health. So the first thing she gonna go to is one flew over the cuckoo's nest, to the extreme. Because mental health has ranges, right?
Yep.
And so most people, they're not gonna start at the low range. Oh, he probably just have a little problem. Maybe he just got to deal with a little anxiety.
Depression, stress, stress. That's what, stress.
But the bias is already baked in.
Yep.
And it shuns us away. And in my mother generation, they, across the board, I didn't see any of my aunties, uncles, her friends, or anyone through that generation growing up utilize mental health services.
Well, you know, when my parents growing up, first of all, mental health services weren't available to them.
To the point.
You know, I mean, if anything, you know, they would take some medication or go alcohol or whatever it was.
Self-medicate.
You know, but kind of tying perception in that. one's perception is one reality. It's one's reality. You know, okay. With perception and growing up. Now, I've been sober 32 years. And I got sober through a 12-step recovery process. And what I had to learn is everything that I thought I knew, I had to relearn it. You know, biases and prejudices, everybody's got them. Everybody has, you know, one form of bias or one form of prejudice against something. You know, an example is if I'm 6 and this kid with green tennis shoes steal my wagon, and I may grow up thinking everybody that wear green tennis shoes steal. And that person that wearing some green tennis shoes might be the person that could save my life, but my bias and my prejudice won't allow that person to do that. So what I've learned, Danny, okay, I've lived 2 lives in one lifetime. I've lived 2 lives in one lifetime. And my life on that side of drugs, alcohol, and part of my belief system, my value system, is totally different than my beliefs and values on this side of the line. And when it comes to perception,
I'm listening.
I had to reevaluate what my perception was of the world itself. I had to question my value system. I had to challenge my belief system. You know, and what mama, daddy, what they told me, it was right. However, it was my interpretation of it is where it got skewed. That's where it went wrong. You know, and growing up, the more I learned, Beck, you mentioned self-awareness. The more I believe, the more we learn about self, the more liberating we become. You know, the more I've learned about me and the rest of the world, the more liberated I am. You know, I don't have any fears. You know, I mean, in any prominent fears. I don't know. I just take risk. You know, and normally, even if the risk that I take doesn't work out to my benefit or the outcome isn't what I think it is, it's still a positive income because that risk actually showed me of what I didn't want to do.
So let me jump in there. And one of the things that through mental health that helped me, that was transformational in my life was, and I wrote this and made it into a poem. I'm not going to read the poem, but the poem started off, I have a fear of fear, but I'm not afraid. I have a fear of fear, but I'm not afraid. So what the premise of that is, some of the issues I had dealing with anger during this session when I was going through this journey of trying to find my way to sobriety, they talked about anger and why it was present in my life, and when it showed up, why did it show up? And so during the lady put up there anger, and then under there she's put fear. And she made the case that the base of anger is fear. And
Pretty much.
what she was trying to explain, that once you got angry, it was because you was afraid. I almost jumped out my seat and said, first thing I said, I ain't scared of nothing when I'm mad. Right? And let me finish set it up for the audience. How the psychology of it didn't resonate with me at first when she said it. But what she broke down was, because someone may be listening and may know someone that acts out aggressively. Just as soon as something happened, they confrontation and anger. What she said was fear causes the anger to compensate for the fear. Because it's causing you to fear the confrontation and to deal with it. Anger helps you deal with the fear of being maybe seen weak,
Being told no.
being told no. And you know what? It changed. It was transformational for me, because then from then on, since I know that fear was attached to anger, and I didn't want to be afraid, even though I had fears, I wanted to always not to live in fear. So to combat not living in fear, or to dealing with feeling afraid, as soon as I saw myself being irritated or angry, I would stop and say, what am I afraid of? What has got me scared because I'm getting angry?
Real quick. Anger and fear are first cousins.
Say that again?
Anger and fear are first cousins.
Where I'm going to find this information at?
Right
it's
here.
It's not on a billboard.
Well, you just found it. Okay. And see, the way that I asked myself, what am I feeling and why am I feeling it? Okay, I mean, exactly what is it is it anger? Is it fear? Is it resentment? Is it jealousy? What is it? And see, what I learned, I can't show you that I'm afraid, so I have to display anger. But deep down inside, it's more fear-driven, whatever it is. And if it's fear-driven, I can't let you know that. So I gotta demonstrate that. I have to display that as anger. So therefore, that'll get you off of me. But deep down inside, I'm really afraid. So when they show up, and like I said, what am I feeling? Exactly what is it? Okay, let's just say I'm angry, because the lady in line, the guy cut me off in traffic. Okay, but why am I angry? Because he cut me off. Because I took it personal. That's it. And he doesn't know me from Adam. He or she doesn't know me from Adam. But if I see them cut off somebody else, okay, I don't take that personal anymore because they did the same thing to them. It's kind of like if I'm late for work and grandma's in front of me doing 80 miles an hour, she going too slow. So I'm angry at grandma. But why am I really angry? Because I'm late. Grandma has nothing to do with it. And grandma could be doing 120 miles per hour, but she's still going too slow. And then how do I eliminate being angry? I get up earlier, and therefore I won't be late, because if I lose my job, then that's my rent, so therefore I'm gonna be homeless. That's why I'm really afraid of being under those conditions. It's amazing how those two work. They're hand in glove, man.
So on this journey, and again, I don't know how many people are riding with us, but I did let them know that it was not a driver, because that let them know that I didn't know where we would end up at, right? And
yeah.
So as I'm looking out the window, I see that we're coming close to the end of our ride. So before we have to get out, I want to try to put an end on the beginning. And me and you know a lot about each other's story. And maybe the audience don't know, but both of us are in long-term recovery. I have, as of today, 20 years of abstinence, not just from drugs and alcohol, but any mood-altering substance.
Congratulations, man.
So when people say drugs and alcohol, Well, there are other things you can do to change the way you feel.
Oh, yeah.
I have been absent of using things to change the way I feel for over 20 years. I struggled in addiction up until I was from the age of probably 18 to 38.
Okay.
It would cost me 15 years in prison 3 different times. That's what happened to me during that addiction phase in the span of 15 years. I've been on this journey, and what I discovered in that journey that I brought out of that is that during that whole process, I was not struggling with failure on any parts of my life that I failed. Because none of those were failure, they were all experiences.
Yep.
What I struggled with was I didn't see that I had fallen in a pattern that starting over was my thing. Recovery was my thing, but I had to repeat it for it to be effective in my life. For whatever reason, how my mind was built, and maybe my mother brought it to my attention at an early age, you're not comfortable with success. You're comfortable with achieving success. But what I discovered, I'm not unique in this pattern of thinking.
No.
So, and some will say it's the fear of success. No, I don't have a fear of success. It's just I don't have a plan for it when it happens. And the journey to get there, I enjoy that. And once I'm there, it leaves me without a purpose of gaining something.
Okay, hold that thought. People that have the fear of success work very hard at failing. I'm gonna say that again. People that have the fear of success work very hard at failing. Let's just an example. Let's say I go buy me a brand new car, and I drive my brand new car off the lot. Off the lot, I'm on my way home. On the way home, I stop by the liquor store and get me a tall can of Old English 800. Now, I'm driving and drinking in my brand new car. Look at what I'm actually doing. I'm setting myself up to lose this car, because if they pull me over while driving and drinking, everything's gone. The brand new car, before I even make the first payment, they're gonna take it. I'm gonna go to jail. So look at how I'm working hard. I'm working at failing.
And so where I am today, and again, I see this car as, and I'm not driving, but I see we're coming up on our stop, is that happened, but today, what changed is I recognize that change was needed. Remember, the only thing that I describe as that won't change is what? A baby.
That's it.
So the resistance to change is a common built into human beings.
Yep.
It's just something that we just don't.
It's an innate.
It's a default
Yes.
of the human.
Yep.
But I learned how to reset the default mechanism in my mind like a computer every day based on the one day at a time process, that I'm not whole unless I default back to reminding myself on a daily basis, change is still needed in my life on a daily basis.
Change it's inevitable.
But I had to apply that into my daily life. It had to become part of brushing my teeth, shaving, getting dressed, grooming. I had to fuse that into my life. It had to be a mainstay. And what it has done is, through a series of principles that I narrowed down to these 3. I see yours in front of you. And let me use No, I got them right here.
Okay.
And so we're gonna get ready to close. So to leave the audience with some type of tools, these three things right here, because less is more. That's another thing I believe in, less is more. Sometimes you don't need a lot.
Nope.
But through these three simple focus, discipline, and consistency has allowed me to gather the 20 years of sobriety.
Okay.
But I didn't just need to get clean from drugs and alcohol because I went through treatment. They made it clear to me, and this is something that was transformational. Drugs and alcohol was never my problem.
No.
What I discovered is in that treatment program that they said your problem lies in the way you think, Danny. It's your thinking patterns. It's the way you think. You don't need drugs and alcohol to land back in prison. You don't need drugs and alcohol to lose a job. You don't need drugs and alcohol to have trouble in relationships. It's in your thinking. And so what had to change in my life was I had to focus on the information that was given me and have a laser recount every day
Yep.
of what got me, what happened, but what happened got better.
That's it, man.
So I don't never forget about what happened.
No, you can't.
And here's an analogy. I have been told, why do you keep looking back? Why do you keep talking about what happened to you? And I've always made the case, I am not addicted to my story. But when you get in your car, take your side mirrors and your rear mirror out your car. The rear mirror, take it out. Those side mirrors, take them out. This is an analogy. How safe do you feel when you drive in your car if you can't look back and see what's behind you?
And see, on that note, that's why the windshield is bigger and that rear view mirror is smaller. See, it's okay to look in that rear view mirror to see what's behind you, but you better focus on what's in front of you.
And so we're gonna almost end with that because what it allows a person to do is to walk away with some tangible, useful. Like, did you give me something that I could actually digest from this conversation? Because the premise of the Encourager podcast is the conversation about change and why change is important. Because it's the single most impactful reason how I went from going to prison 3 times, struggling with substance abuse for so long, and 20 years, I put a gap between that. And it's because I'm still willing to sit down and have a conversation about what happened and how what happened got better. I want to thank you, Robert, for being my guest on The Encourager
My
today.
pleasure, sir.
And I have a couple of mantras I use, some of the things that I say all the time. And one of the things that was transformation in my life when I first got out of prison, and I didn't have a lot of things, people will say, well, why are you smiling? You got a nice smile. You always smiling. And what they didn't know is I had all this what happened in my life. And so I just began to tell people, well, my smile is my style. And with that, I want to thank the producers behind this show. I've always said I only needed one person in my life to believe in what I do and how impactful I could be with what happened in my life and how I got better. And that's the reason why I'm here today, because I do have that one person in my life. So thank you, Mark, for being that one person that sees the value in what happened in my life and how what happened got better. Thank you.